and Conservative corruption. And not for the first time, I find myself wondering whether it's possible to die of sarcasm. Matt's in Glastonbury. Matt, what would you like to say?
Hello there.
Hello, Matt.
I just wanted to pick up, or not take Cambridge with, but speak up what one of your previous callers saying that this is what politicians do.
Yes.
And now I am, for want of a better word, a politician. I'm a district councillor.
Yes.
And there are lots of us up and down the country that are working to make our communities better, to make our counties better. And we don't get paid. I get an allowance every year of just over £4,000, which covers whatever stationery stuff. But this is my job. I've given up my work as a teacher previously to do this full time. I don't get paid. Now,
I think arguably you should. I just would add to your point by saying there are lots and lots of MPs who do good work as well.
Oh, absolutely,
they're
yes.
just generally not the ones, not the household names increasingly.
That's right. They've become household names because of the stuff that goes on. Yeah. But I wanted to make sure that people recognise the fact that we're not all politicians. You can't tar us all with the same brush.
No, I agree.
We are all, there are many, many of us around that are doing our damnedest to do whatever we can for our communities. And my personal thrust is for education in Somerset. That's what my push is. But I'm not getting money for doing this. My gratification comes from, at the end of it, from seeing a product that I've worked on. I don't get...
Well, I think that's how Ian Duncan-Smith feels about hand sanitizer, isn't it? And the 25 grand a year that he gets for it is just coincidental, really, incidental to the whole process. He's doing it for the love of hand sanitizer. Nothing at all to do with the fact that he gets paid money by hand sanitizer companies.
Yes, that may be part of the problem, that they don't realise that what they're doing is somehow egregious.
Yeah. No, but they really don't. Why do you think that is?
I think it's a culture, I'm going to get slated for saying this, I'm afraid it's a culture within the Conservative Party, that nothing is worth doing unless there's a financial reward at the end of it. And
again, I would add that is not true of the entire Conservative Party.
Absolutely, yes, but it's a numbers game.
But the people we have been talking about, you would level that accusation at them.
Yeah. Sorry, say that again?
The people we have been talking about, the names on all of these lists, from Sir Geoffrey Cox down to Chris Grayling, that would be the accusation, is that they...
Yes, I would unreservedly say that. I mean, this chap that's been over in the Bahamas or wherever he was...
BVI, British Virgin Islands.
BVI, that's right, yes. And now, everybody else in the country was locked down, couldn't go to Costa del Sol or whatever, but he's gone to over this place, and he's voting from over there in our parliament on our dollar, and that's okay, is it? Now, what part of your moral compass has to be broken before you realise that's not okay?
Well, I think you've already answered your own question, and whether or not it is double standards or whether or not they think anybody who's risen to the lofty heights that I currently occupy should be able to avail themselves of these impunities and freedoms. They think that they are entitled to behave in the way that they behave, and not to defend him, but I'm 99% certain he wouldn't have been in breach of any COVID regulations when he went there. I think he had to quarantine when he arrived, and even this lot, Matt, would probably not have had the front. I know they sit in the front bench not wearing masks, while the government's official advice is to wear masks in precisely those contexts, and Johnson was in a hospital the other day, but I don't think any of them would actually have flown to the Caribbean in direct contravention of the government's own COVID guidelines. I think, I think we'd have heard about it sooner, and B, I don't think they're that stupid.
I agree, James, but we then come down to, again, the moral balance. There's a difference between following the letter of the law and following the spirit of the law.
Yes.
There are times where you've got to stop yourself. You bring yourself up and think, hang on, is this going to be stupid? Am I going to look a fool by doing this? Now, me personally, I don't want to bring it down to a party political thing, but I'm a Lib Dem, and I'm still getting slated for a decision over the tuition fees, which happened a decade ago, which is it's nonsense. It was a nonsense in the first place.
Well, it's not as if Nick Clegg's gone off to earn squillions of pounds working for Facebook, is it? That would really get your goat.
It would really screw the nail in. That's just ridiculous. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, why is there such a grievance against something that happened a decade ago? Which was, yes, it was a problem, but frankly, problems happen all the time.
And then we're back to my favourite subject, aren't we? Which is that the people are gaslit. So
Yes,
every time a politician that the newspaper owners like does something that is pretty close to unforgivable, they start shouting about tuition fees or whatever, some misdemeanor or some misstep from 5-10 years ago that is supposed to be held up as evidence that they're all as bad as each other, which is, of course, leading us neatly back to the point you phoned in to make. They're not all as bad as each other, and it's actually really dangerous for democracy to say that they are. David Lammy presents 2 hours of radio a week on LBC, and there are people desperate to pretend that somehow stands comparison with what Sir Geoffrey Cox was doing in the blinking Caribbean.
Yeah. I have to say that it does come down to this ultimate thing, that what I call the dilution of democracy. So I'll stand next year for county. Maybe in a couple of years I'll stand for Westminster. Thank you. But if people know that when people know that I'm a Lib Dem, they'll say, "Oh, don't vote for him. He's a Fib Dem," or whatever nonsense they come up with.
You've got to let it go.
So what they'll do instead is, we'll vote for the same old chap because that's a known quantity of corruption, rather than this other guy that might be a bit, it might be a Fib Dem, but he might be all right. So let's just stick with what we've got. And it just becomes, or even worse than that, James, they'll say, "I won't vote anyway because the government always gets in."
And we had that call yesterday. And I'm going to translate what you've just said into fluent Dominic Raab-ese. And that is, well, if constituents have really got a problem with any of this behaviour, then they can make their feelings clear at the ballot box at the next election.
Yeah.
Suits them down to the ground. Well, unless you're Zach Goldsmith, of course, in which case you can be chucked out twice by the ballot box at the next election, 3 times if you include the London mayoral, and still end up a minister in the Foreign Office and a Lord in the House of Lords, or, as you might technically describe them, the Houses of Parliament. Thank you, Matt. And I stress that point. I know it sometimes might be difficult to believe, but I really do stress the point that not all politicians are bad. They are not all as bad as each other. Not all politicians are liars. And equally, in the interest of balance, back in 2015, Keir Starmer did legal work for Gibraltar, which is also a tax haven.